It goes without saying that not every college football program can win a national championship. Some teams have one magical season that becomes their best team in program history. But whether you're a blue blood or a bottom feeder, one team stands above the rest. And today that's what we're going to look at for every Power 5 team. Starting off in the ACC was Boston College, who finished top 10 in the AP poll in 2007. Team got up to all the way to second in the AP poll and was led by Matt Ryan in the wild 2007 year. Clemson had three national championships to choose from in 1980, in 2016, and in 2017. The only team to go 15-0, however, is a 2018 team who won games by an average of 31 points per game, led by Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, and T. Higgins. In 2013, Duke finished 23rd in the AP poll, marking their first finish in the AP poll since 1960, and ended up losing to Johnny Manziel's Texas A&M team in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl 52-48. Florida State also has three national championships to choose from, but I'm choosing 1999. Whole team was super dominant, won every game by a million points, and the whole team went to the NFL. In 1990, Georgia Tech went undefeated and won their first and only national championship in school history despite finishing second in the AP poll. In 2006, Louisville got as high as third in the AP poll and ended up capping off that season with a win in the Orange Bowl versus Wake Forest. In 2001, Miami may have had the greatest college football team ever, dominated every game, was the best defense of all time, giving up 9 points per game with guys like Ed Reed, Sean Taylor, and a bunch of other guys. UNC to date has still not won a New Year's Six bowl game, but in 1997 they went 11-1 under Mack Brown and beat Virginia Tech in the Gator Bowl by 39 to a top 15 finish in the AP poll and won the Gator Bowl versus Notre Dame. In 1976, Pitt went undefeated and won their only national championship in school history, led by Heisman winner Tony Dorsett. In 1959, Syracuse won their only natty in school history, did this without Jim Brown. Virginia has not had much football success in their school's history, but they won the New Year's Six Bowl in 1995 versus Georgia. In 1999, Michael Vick led Virginia Tech to an 11-1 record and a natty appearance versus Florida State. In 2021, Sam Hartman and A.T. Perry led Wake Forest to a top 15 finish, getting as high as top 10 in both the AP and CFP rankings, and lost in the ACC championship game versus Pitt. 1988 marks Notre Dame's last national championship and only national championship under Lou Holtz. I think people are starting to forget how good Baylor was in the late 2010s and early 2020s. They made the New Year's Six Bowl 2 out of 3 years and won the Sugar Bowl versus Ole Miss in 2021. In what may be the most random national championship ever, BYU went undefeated out of the WAC and beat Michigan in the Holiday Bowl to secure a national championship. In 2021, Luke Fickell led a bunch of NFL prospects like Desmond Ridder, Alec Pierce, Jerome Ford, and Sauce Gardner to be the first mid-major school to ever make the college football playoffs. Even though they lost to Alabama, this was still a major moment in Cincinnati history. 2015, Houston finished 13-1, winning the American Conference and beating Florida State in the New Year's Six Bowl. Surprisingly, Iowa State has only finished in the AP poll 3 times, and their only top 10 finish came in 2020 after winning a New Year's Six Bowl game under Brock Purdy, Xavier Hutchinson, and Breece Hall. In what may be the most random season in college football history, Kansas came out of nowhere in 2007 and was one game away from making the national championship, ultimately missing out. They still won the Orange Bowl versus Virginia Tech that year. In 1999, Kansas State had a dominant year, going 11-1 under Bill Snyder and winning an average of 24 points per game. Oklahoma has a lot of natties to choose from, but Bob Stoops in 2000 led them to their most recent national championship, going 13-0. Interesting enough, they won the national championship 13-2 versus Florida State. 2011, Oklahoma State had one of the most interesting teams ever, led by 28-year-old Brandon Weeden and future top 10 NFL draft pick Justin Blackmon. They finished third in the AP poll, beating Stanford in the Fiesta Bowl 41-38. In 2005, Vince Young led Texas to a 13-0 record under Mack Brown and won perhaps the greatest game in college football history, beating USC in the Rose Bowl on a last-second touchdown by Vince Young 41-38. In what maybe is the most improbable run to a national championship of all time, Sonny Dykes led TCU to an undefeated regular season where they won most games by 10 points or less. Then they would go on to lose in a Big 12 championship game, then beat Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl to play in the national championship where they got boat raced by Georgia 65-7. Texas Tech has not had as much program history as I thought they did. But in 2008, led by Michael Crabtree, they had an 11-2 record and beat number 1 Texas on a game-winning TD, which is probably the greatest moment in Texas Tech sports history. In 2017, UCF went 13-0, beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl, and has the infamous claimed national championship that year. In 2007, West Virginia was one game away from making the national championship, ended up losing the Pitt in the backyard brawl, but still beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl by 20 points. Next up to the Big Ten. In 1951, Illinois went undefeated, 9-0-1. Ended up winning the Rose Bowl versus Stanford and finishing 4th in the AP poll. It is no secret that Indiana has not had a lot of football success, but in 1967 they made a Rose Bowl and finished top 5 in the AP poll. In 1958, Iowa went 8-1-1, claiming their only national championship in school history. In 1953, Maryland went 10-1 and won their only national championship in school history, beating Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl 7-0. Just last year, Michigan went 15-0, beating Washington in the national championship 34-13, led by J.J. McCarthy, Roman Wilson, Blake Corum, and nation's top defense. Michigan finally got over the hump. In 1966, Michigan State went undefeated and claimed their last national championship to date in school history. Minnesota did win 3 straight national championships from 1934 to 1936, but their last one in 1960 is just not as old. In the mid to late 1990s, specifically from 94 to 97, Nebraska won 3 national championships. Any of the 3 could have been chosen, but I chose the 1997 team. People tend to forget, but in the 1990s, Northwestern was a really good football program. They had the best defense in the nation and ended up winning a couple of Big Ten championships, but ultimately in 1995 they lost in the Rose Bowl versus USC 41-32. In 2002, Ohio State had their only undefeated national championship to date, going 14-0. In 1986, Penn State won their last national championship as an independent school and went undefeated. In 2000, Purdue only won 8-4, but they made the Rose Bowl and were led by Drew Brees and finished top 15 in the AP poll that year. In 2006, Rutgers had their best win in school history, beating number 3 Louisville, and started the season 9-0 before ultimately falling to Cincinnati and West Virginia, but won the Texas Bowl 37-10 versus Kansas State. In 1999, Wisconsin had a top 5 finish in the AP poll and beat Stanford in the Rose Bowl 17-9. Arizona can very well have their best season in program history this year, but in 1998, they went 12-1 and won the Holiday Bowl versus Nebraska 23-20. In 1975, Arizona State finished 2nd in the AP poll and had their only undefeated season in program history. Cal has had some football success here and there, but in 1920, they won by an average of 55.1 points per game and went 9-0. In 1990, Colorado went 11-1-1 and enjoyed their only national championship in school history. Oregon has still yet to win a national championship, but in 2012, led by D'Anthony Thomas and Marcus Mariota, they won the Fiesta Bowl versus Kansas State, won 12-1, and finished 2nd in the AP poll. In 2000, Oregon State won 11-1 and won the Fiesta Bowl versus Notre Dame, 41-9. Notre Dame would get revenge this year, though. But in 2000, Oregon State did enjoy a top 5 finish in the AP poll. Stanford, like Cal, has had football success here and there, but in 1926, they won their only national championship in school history. Another old national championship in 1954, UCLA won their only national championship going 9-0. And if anybody does not like me putting old national championships, when you go into a stadium, the first thing you're going to see for all of these schools is that they won a national championship. So in my opinion, that makes it their most important season in school history. In 2004, led by Reggie Bush and Pete Carroll, USC won their 2nd of back-to-back natties, destroying Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl 55-19. In the mid to late 2000s, Utah established themselves as one of the best group of 5 teams ever specifically the 2004 and 2008 team. The 2008 team, however, finished second in the AP poll, went 13-0, and beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl in what is maybe the greatest Group of Five team of all time. In 1991, Washington enjoyed their only national championship in school history, winning by an average of 30 points per game, and beat Michigan in the national title. However, Michigan got their revenge this year. 2003, Washington State finished top 10 in the AP poll, going 10-3 and beating Texas in the Holiday Bowl. The 2020 Alabama Crimson Tide were one of the greatest teams of all time, dominating in every game, winning by an average of almost 30 points per game. This team was led by Mac Jones and Devonta Smith, who won the Heisman Trophy that year. In 1964, Arkansas went undefeated, winning the national championship for the only time in school history. In 2010, led by Heisman Trophy winner and number one overall pick Cam Newton, Auburn scored 41 points per game and went 14-0, winning the BCS championship game that year by 3 points versus Oregon. In 2008, Florida will lose their first game of the year and then go undefeated the rest of the year, led by Tim Tebow, beating Oklahoma in the national championship 24-14. In 1977, Kentucky had their highest ranking in the AP poll ever, going 10-1 and finishing 6th. It was tough picking between the 2022 and 2021 Georgia Bulldogs national championship teams, but in 2022 they had their only 15-0 season ever, winning the national championship versus TCU 65-7. This was the largest bowl win ever until they broke it this year with an Orange Bowl win versus Florida State 63-3. In 2019, LSU had perhaps the greatest college football team of all time. The entire team went to the NFL. They dominated every game they played, won 15-0, winning the national championship versus Clemson 42-25. 2014, Mississippi State was the first number one ranked team in the college football playoff rankings history. Although they did fall off that year, that is still a monumental achievement for the program. Like Kansas and West Virginia, in 2007, Missouri got one game away from making to the national championship, getting all the way up to number one in the AP poll that year. They did end up winning the Cotton Bowl versus Arkansas 38-7. It was tough to pick between this year's Ole Miss team and the 1960 national championship Ole Miss team. I am going to go with the team that won the national championship, going 10-1. 2013, South Carolina finished top 5 in the AP poll, going 11-2 and beating Wisconsin in the Orange Bowl. This team had sophomore Jadeveon Clowney, who would end up going number one in the next year's NFL draft. In 1998, a year after their best player in program history, Peyton Manning, got drafted to the NFL, Tennessee would go undefeated and win the national championship. I know I have gone with old national championships teams for a lot of these. Texas A&M does have two in 1919 and 1939. I think those are too old. And the 2020 team was really good, going 9-1, and arguably should have made the college football playoffs. Still finished top 5 of the AP poll and won the Orange Bowl versus North Carolina. Vanderbilt does not have a lot of football success, only finishing in the AP poll 3 times, and this was one of them in 2012.